like what Randy was saying, is it really let us, embrace what was cool about the game, which then fed into design, and design was able to do things that were more over the top. It eventually fed into the skill trees. It became the action abilities that people, that the characters started to have. And all of this stuff just kind of fueled each other and kind of was almost like one-upping. And it would come back, and now the art had to be over the top. The effects had to be over the top, the audio and so on. And it just kept going and going. And so that's really what sort of happened. And I'll just take you through one of the characters like Mordecai. So this is kind of where he originally started as the concept art. And so he's this buff guy, but he's got a lot of the parts that we all know, later that are there. And so that was one of the tricks, was not changing everything about the game, but you wanted to still be true to the game we all loved, but start pushing it a little bit.
That was in April of 2006.
Yeah. So this was the first attempt of that guy, right? Like, let's try inking him up. And it was a bit, really super detailed and noisy. Didn't have a lot of character, wasn't really, that was also kind of a little scary.
Oh, and then Kester jumped in.
So then we have Scott Kester, who started doing a lot of the concept art for this, and his style is really extremely cartoony, right? I mean, more than the game even is. And so then Adam May, he's a great modeler, then would take it, and he was much more built into realism. And again, Scott is like kind of digging into these different things and showing some of what we wanted to do with him. And this is still some of the past stuff. But keep going, Randy.
So here's Adam's first model.
Adam, was one of the artists that had been, these guys are like gearing up their whole career to be very realistic modelers. And so they're trying to make utter photorealism. And so for him, he was taking Scott's sort of really cartoony thing, character, and because he was doing this realism thing, he could never get himself all the way to the cartoon side. So he was really in this place that was sort of semi-realistic, and it was this nice balance. And what ended up was something that is sort of like this mid-ground between very overly stylized and something that was something we were all comfortable with, comfortable looking at. And then you layer on top of that and there's the low poly model. And then from there, you now have our art style on there.
We changed his beard from this point too a bit.
A little bit.
The beard argument was.
Yeah, it ended up not being quite as extreme with the pointy bit.
That was a big debate.
Yeah.
Mordecai's beard was a let me go back to this concept art.
Right. There it is. Look at that. Yeah.
How crazy it could have been. So, there was a different version that fully curled around itself. Remember that one?
I don't remember that one.
It was like it looked like a toe of a shoe from somebody who lives up in places that are colder than it is here.
But even here, in doing this sort of like concept art style, and that's the final one. So his hair, is black, and one of the things that's interesting about it is using the old Marvel way of when they would do sort of characters that were in black, whether it was like Spider-Man when he was in his black suit and all that, they would use blue as the highlights. So we kind of did some things like that in there, is just using these really Illustrator techniques as we went through.
Mordecai, he changed race a couple of times too.
Yeah. He ended up semi-Hispanic, I think, in the end.
Well, Truxican,
yes, that's true.
They don't have, Earth doesn't exist.
It's way out there. So.
We don't know, we don't have the normal Earth races out in the Borderlands.
I had a quick question regarding his facial hair. Why no moustache? Because I noticed, this is just a personal beef, but I like the full beard.
Yeah. You'll have to ask him.
Really?
Yeah.
It's, he goes his own way. It's actually Bloodwing will get, pick at it.
Oh, right, yeah.
Who in the hell are these people?
Yeah.
Obviously Tanis on the right, but
that's right.
who the heck
That
are
was
the
an
other two
early
guys?
Tanis was on the right.
And I think that's Roland, I think, is over on the far left.
No, that was a Mordecai and that was a Roland.
Oh, was that?
On the left, it looks like Matthew Perry, like Chandler.
Ha! The guy in the middle is like the frumpiest hero I've ever
so that's
seen.
Roland in the middle, and we were trying to do an older, he was going to be older at first.
Oh, like the grizzled kind of guy.
Old veteran.
Some things came through though. Look what came through, right?
Yep.
The asymmetrical pads, like the knee pad on the right and the shoulder on the left. Some things, it's interesting how the progression of creative development goes. But he's so boring and non-memorable. The cloak is, the vest is vaguely military, right? Like you can imagine that was a military issue, and eventually the backstory of Roland was he was a former member of the Crimson Lance.
Tanis.
Yeah, Tanis went a long way. Yeah, here's some of the.
Brick's really pissed off.
Brick got bigger and even crazier in his proportions as we evolved him. Like his proportions got even more wild.
Brick was like didn't exist until after the art style changed too.
That's right.
So he was like the first character that was actually built with all of this in mind that Brian's
That was
talking
another.
about.
That was another weird thing that. Okay, so we had this game that's 4-player co-op. But we had only 3 player characters to choose from for most of the game's
Yeah,
development.
for almost the whole time.
And everybody's like, we should probably add a 4th.
Yeah, there were a bunch of.
There was debate the whole time.
Yeah, there was a
We're like,
bunch of
no,
us
we shouldn't add a 4th.
on the other projects who were like,
who
what
would
the
fight
heck?
against
Why
that?
aren't there? Where's the 4th guy?
So finally somebody relented and said, well, all right, we'll make a berserker.
And there was really Ruben. It's like, Ruben's like,
Yeah.
the 4th guy has to be a berserker.
Yeah.
Like, it just has to be. And we're like, why? It just has to. Because reasons, It's like, I guess he's right.
Yeah.
Can't argue with the reasons.
Yeah. So, there you go. We somehow managed to.
Yeah, so we had to reorganize the team, getting everybody on, if you push the merry-go-round the wrong way, and you've got some people who are fighting the whole thing, then, the merry-go-round, that's not going to go as fast, right? So that was one of the things that was an issue on the project, was getting people. And there were some of the guys, there was a couple of guys that just couldn't get over it.
It was hard.
And
We
they
had a few
left.
casualties.
We lost
We
a
had
couple
some
of artists
casualties.
who just could not get him on board with the art style.
Let me tell you about the merry-go-round analogy. If you're ever
Yeah,
on a
please.
team project, this is something I use this all the time. It's a very simple premise, right? You know, like the rusty merry-go-round you have at the schoolyard that's like the metal thing that spins around. And you can imagine, like, if there's one kid, okay, he can get it going and then jump on and ride until the friction slows it down. If you have that thing loaded up with like a whole team full of people, right, it's really heavy and it's hard to get it going. But someone pushing at it can move it a little bit, and if a couple other people help, eventually it'll start to move. And once it's moving, it gets easier to keep it moving, and it gets easier to keep that flow going. And if it's going really fast, everybody has a good time, throws their hands up and goes, wee, right? So like, sometimes though, if you have some people pushing one way and you have somebody else pushing the other way, even just one person or 2 people pushing the opposite direction, it makes it almost impossible to get that momentum going. And here's the secret about a merry-go-round. It really doesn't matter whether it's turning right or turning left. What matters is if it's going fast. So you have to have everyone pushing in the same direction. Because pushing in the same direction means you'll go fast, which means it'll be awesome and you'll have a good time. And if you have people pushing in the wrong direction, you got to say, look, you might be right, but honestly, it's a coin flip. Let's just get this thing going fast. Everybody's pushing this way, come over here. And if they can't
The
get
kid's
around
like, I
to
just
it,
want to play a merry-go-round. I don't understand why you're making it such a political thing.
if you got folks pushing the wrong way, though, sometimes they got to go. Even if they're awesome.
Get the fuck off the playground.
Seriously, no, schoolyard justice.
So a quick story about accidental reverse motivation. So we had an artist on the team, Robert Santiago, and he was trying to find all these really quick and easy ways, using plugins and whatever he could find to kind of try to get this style. He was just kind of avoiding doing it the hard way, which was do it by hand,
Hand
really
paint it.
really do that. And this is a guy that has had some experience working in comic books and some other things. And so we were using some outsourcers to help with, we had a lot of assets that needed to be done. And we were working with them, and they were doing this really good job of kind of proving out the concept. And I was talking in the hallway about it one day, and I think he overheard me saying, God, you got to see this stuff. It's amazing. And it pretty much just sort of like made him go, oh man, if they can do it, I'm going to kick their ass. And so he just went through this thing, and he ended up being our best painter. He's absolutely hands
He
down
still
in the
like doesn't
studio.
go home.
He's the best.
He
in the
still doesn't.
studio.
That guy still produces more content than anybody.
And he's phenomenal. So it was kind of interesting how that kind of motivated him to rise up and do what he was actually really, really amazing at. And then at the end of the day, it was sort of a he who makes it wins. We had to just, that's kind of a mantra we use a lot at the studio, but it is, somebody would go and do something in some area of the game, and you just didn't have a lot of time to react to it and kind of debate it. It would just like, if it was kind of cool, then it
don't
went
argue
on,
the concept, just build it.
Just
And
build
by
it. and then
nature
we
of
keep
it,
going.
of you having built it, it exists now and it becomes a thing.
Kind of like the whole art style change in general.
So let's look at, here's how it looks now. This was Borderlands 1. Interestingly enough, like, if you contrast with like that first trailer, like there's clearly more saturation, more color, and more character to it. But you can also, if you know, we're all playing Borderlands 2 now. You can see that you're already feeling that we've continued the iteration. So even though this stuff has a lot more color and saturation to it, compared to say Borderlands 2, it's still kind of brownish.
There are also fewer butt shots in Borderlands 2.
Yeah, that shot became really, like, every single news site would just go to this one. Whenever they'd write a story about Borderlands, this would be the little shot they'd put off to the side. And it's like, really? Come on, we're better than that, aren't we? Like, why can't you use this shot? Like, so much cooler. We actually, you know, because we got to decide, we put Brick on the cover of PC Gamer magazine, which is where we announced the art style change. And we had Brick, like, punching you in the face. We had to change, notice his belt buckle? That's Elvis's logo, Elvis Presley, taking care of business in a flash with a lightning bolt. We had to change that because we don't own Elvis Presley's estate. So
It's also a seatbelt belt buckle.
it's a seatbelt from the airplane.
That's clever. That's neat.
Yeah, and around his neck is there's a dog's paw.
That's Priscilla.
That's Priscilla, that's his pet dog that died. And he
First one.
Yeah.
Second
Yeah,
one
that's
didn't
another
make
one.
it very long either.
Yeah, there was a thing, like we kind of tried to build off of aspects of their character design from the first game when trying to sort of give them backstories as NPCs in the second game. And that's sort of the most interesting detail about Brick's character is that dog's paw. So we're like, what if we just made it a thing that every time he loves dogs and every time he gets one, they die?
This is the Anthony humor now coming in.
So when you see Brick in Borderlands 2, he has 2 dog paws, which means that in between the last time he played as in Borderlands 1 and Borderlands 2 started, he found a dog and went, ah, fuck, and lost it again. Oh well, hack, and into it.
And in the Marcus intro video, you can see him with his
Oh yeah,
puppy.
he's got a little puppy.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Which is
Just
like
a little
legit
baby,
sad.
baby Brick
Yeah.
when Marcus is telling the story. Got Bloodwing.
Yeah, that one's dead too.
Too soon.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
Yeah, we're still mad about that.
Look at this cactus.
He hatched a young one though in the end credits, so spoiler.
Jesus, look at that blood.
Look at
Lots
that
of
turret.
blood. Yeah, look at that
Well, the
turret.
shield was
It
cool.
feels so
Yeah, the
obsolete
shield
now.
was very cool, but
One of the other neat things too that we figured out, we kept a lot of the realism in the effects. So the fire and the particle effects, the realism worked there. You can see the black smoke in the background on that smokestack. And
It helped to make it acceptable. You know, 'cause
Yeah.
every single thing was this, you know, graphic art style or concept art style.
we didn't want it to seem
Yeah.
so much like a stylized world as this is just how this particular universe looks. That's real in their universe. Paul,
yeah. So
Anthony,
yeah,
what
we're
are we doing here?
we're sort of talking about
Hey.
Borderlands
we sort of talked about all the where we came from and all that art style change, and then we worked on some of the DLCs and things got a little zanier in Zombie Island and then again in General Knox. And then it was time for Borderlands 2, and so we had to sort of sit down and figure out where we were at and where we were going and what was working. And some of you may have heard this before because I've told this kind of stuff a few times, but Zombie Island and General Knox were really myself and the team working on those really trying to push. We wanted to see where we could go with storytelling and the attitude of the game, and see what you guys as fans would appreciate or reject. So they were really kind of experiments, those 2 DLCs, to see if people were enjoying that going a little further with the humor side of the game. And if everyone had been like, oh, we hate this, we wanted it more serious, Borderlands 2 would be very different than what you've all played. But the response was exactly the opposite, that people really loved that we were getting a bit more character interactions, a little more storytelling, and a more quirky and offbeat sense of humor.
I want to actually interrupt a bit because it wasn't that obvious to us at the time. In fact, when we had just launched Borderlands 2, we were still getting hate mail from people like, "Why did you change it to a cartoon? I love to read." We were still getting people raging. I pre-ordered it when it was realism. I want my money back. And work in progress, right? But yeah, it wasn't totally clear to us what was the right, we believed we had it, but we needed to prove it and test it in the marketplace. The other thing too that kind of feeds into, when Paul and the guys were working, and Paul really began to take full point on the DLCs, from the design point of view, and we had barely figured out how to make Borderlands just in time to ship it. And so having shipped it, now we had all the tools and kind of understanding, and so that's where they were really able to run and go crazy in the DLCs.
Yeah, we were in those DLCs, we were really trying to push what could our mission system do, what kinds of stories could we tell, how could we get the NPCs a little bit more expressive. Some of you guys may remember that in Borderlands 1, we didn't have any lip sync, no one animated. So you'd go up and talk to Scooter, and he would just be like, "I have a job for you,"
But in a really really enthusiastic tone, like, "I got a fucking job for you," and he's just doing this.
Yeah, he's just,
and his mouth's not moving.
Yeah, and so we would tease in the office. We were like, man, these guys are just cardboard cutouts. We could have just put these little standees everywhere, and they would have been as expressive. So we started playing with some of those things in those DLCs. And it was well received, so we, now we're starting to think about Borderlands 2, and there were a few major things that you guys as fans and the team wanted to pull off, and things that reviewers were bringing up. And so one of the things that Brian was talking about a lot was Brown. We were tired of Brown. You guys were tired of Brown. So one of the big things we wanted to do was
I feel like my wrestling name shouldn't have been Browntown if I knew this is where this discussion was going to go.
Was about providing a lot more variety in the look of the world. And so before we had a story, before we had anything, we were like, where are we going to go? What kinds of places? And we sort of came up with the snow, grass, white, green, black were sort of the
red too with the lava stuff.
The high level, yeah, and of course that was sort of the start, was snow, grasslands, and then Mordor, for lack of a better term. That's what we called it for what became Ash, the Iridium Blight. We called it Ash during development. So, and then from a design standpoint, it was about bringing a lot more story to the game was a high priority. And so we built off of what we knew worked well in Nox, some of the new humor, having more interaction with the characters that were giving you the missions during the course of the mission. We knew those things were really connecting and working well, so we went all in on that.
There were some long debates about that, though, I remember, after I got hired, because I come from a sort of a comedy background, and I played all the DLC in the main game before ever coming to Gearbox, so I sort of saw it, I felt like it was objective. I could say, well, obviously, your zombie stuff was the funniest stuff, and the General Knox stuff, and the sillier stuff. But internally, there was this not unreasonable at all sort of feeling that the reason that Borderlands works is because it's not silly all the time, and that because there's darkness and there's an attempt to be sort of grim. So we had a lot of back and forth about okay, Borderlands 2, the person coming to it, have they played the Zombie Island DLC? If they haven't, are they going to find it really weird if we do something that's really silly and funny? Are we supposed to go more toward the original Borderlands kind of tone? But there was a lot of things about that people didn't seem to like very much. So where does that lie? And we try to kind of I guess, I say hedge our bets, it sounds cowardly or something like that. But I think what we really tried to do was keep it so that the main plot was kind of funny, but only in terms of character funny. A bad thing happens and then the character is kind of sarcastic about it because that's who they are. Whereas in the side quests you could have oh, that's an enemy called a boner fart, ha ha ha. That's an Oscar Wilde joke. But yeah, and then we just sort of tried to make that work. But even that was what do the fans want? What are they used to? What is Borderlands in terms of humor and tone? And just trying to sort of suss that out. Because again, the script for 2 is 8 times the size of the script for 1. So as much as it's a sequel, a lot of it was us sort of trying to look at it as a sort of a new thing in terms of the way we were delivering a story based off of the lessons that had been learned in the DLC, and sort of see what needed to happen in terms of what the player was thinking, what the plot was, and all that stuff.
One of the other things that helped too, when we started Borderlands 2, when we finished Borderlands 1, we kind of hoped we would sell about 2 million units. By the time we were really figuring out Borderlands 2, we had sold 5 million units. So I was able to start Borderlands 2 with more than twice the budget that we built all of Borderlands 1 with. So, as creators, every one of us has the ambitions to do the best thing ever, but we have to work within our means. If we, you can try to predict what the market will bear and what you're going to sell at the end, and if you end up spending more than what you make, you don't get to do it anymore. So it's, there is a business component to this too, and the fact that Borderlands 1 was so successful allowed me to, let the resources go in, and it allowed Borderlands 2 to, how big was the script?
It was about 8 times bigger.
Yeah,
I may have said 6 previous time, so it's going to get bigger the more you ask me that.
10 times.
But I think it was
It's
around
like 12
8.
times bigger.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the most recent DLC, the Tiny Tina, that was the most expensive. The Tiny Tina DLC was
The least tiny
6
budget.
times the budget of our first game.
Holy shit.
First complete game.
I
It
didn't
was-
even know that.
It was the largest, yeah,
You don't mean Borderlands. You mean,
no, I mean Opposing Force.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
okay, Jesus, whoa. I was like, I feel really irresponsible for writing that script as big as I did.
It was.
It was actually Borderlands irresponsible. Like,
okay.
We're still wondering, I'm not sure we're going to make our money back, but who cares on that one? We're doing so good with the main game, we're fine. We'll get a little bit behind on that just to make such
It
a
might be
big.
the most expensive DLC ever.
Probably. It's probably the most I mean, I don't have all the data of everything everybody else has done, but yeah, we spent a lot on that one.
Reckless.
It was definitely reckless. Every time,
But it's
Steve,
awesome.
what's funny is Steve sends his
Gotta
numbers
render all
around.
those
This is
diamonds.
Steve Gibson. He runs the marketing group at Gearbox, and he'll send numbers around like, oh wow, it's killing it. This is like, we're selling more of these DLC than ever. And then like I'll joke with, because our CFO's on there, it's like, yeah, we might even break even. We're fine. You guys love the game so much. We sold a lot more, even more Borderlands 2, so we're able to spend into it. That's why we're able to do so much support and keep the price low on that stuff.
Yeah, just to go back to a few of the things, I think a lot of people don't understand how many things we really went all in on in Borderlands 2. I mean, the UI, you saw the ancient UI, and then of course we got much better before we launched the first game. But the UI, we just trashed it, just threw it away, and started over because we wanted to have these characters be, more visible to you guys. And then the guns, we spam 1 million guns in the first game. We just threw them all out. We threw out millions of guns and started over again. And the main goal there was that we felt the guns were great for the gameplay and the game design angle, but they didn't match the rest of the world visually because they were one of the assets that didn't really have the opportunity to get rebuilt. When the art style changed. So we threw all of those out so that we could really get all those manufacturers to have their own look and feel, and then we again rolled that back into the gameplay of them as well. So, we just tried to take every single element of Borderlands 1 and had 2 goals. One, don't fuck it up, because we knew we had the heart there that was excellent. So don't screw it up was first. And then just to take it to the next level, make it better than
Make it 2.0.
I've got I've got the debut trailer.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So we can see, and you can see how much the color and the attitude just amplified, and seeing it all here in this short context, we're feeling this evolution. So let's fire this up.
Handsome Jack. This tyrant will be the end of us all. We're gonna need a lot of guns. Pandora's changed. Are you ready?
There's Yasmin. Yasmin's Australian, by the way. She's from Sydney.
That's the most overstimulating couple of minutes of my
That
life.
was pretty awesome.
Man, it's
That
been a
was
while
a
since I
fun
watched
trailer to
that.
me.
Yeah.
Cigarettes.
I remember like I insisted on that we're gonna need a lot of guns, and I realized that was in the first Borderlands 1 trailer, so I don't know why I like that line so much, but I made that go in both of the trailers. And then the what?
You made that call at the shoot. Remember we were shooting Yasmin? You were
Yeah.
like, oh, we should put her at the end.
That's right. When we were shooting Yasmin for the live action sequences, like she did this thing with the eye up, and we were really close up on her with that red camera, and it's like that. Let's throw that in as a little stinger. Why not?
And I was like, God
And then
damn it.
the Mikey did some funny stuff there. The joy puke, like that was Mikey with that, and I remember like that. I was like, God, it's a funny thing, but wouldn't it be funny if joy puke was the last word because it's the punchline of that sequence? And you guys tried it like 6 different ways. Like, no, it's kind of funny. It's just throwing it in the middle there like that. You know, get ready to joy puke your face off. And then what was the other one?
The boss, showing the boss. And
Yeah, you
the
guys
showing
were
the boss. I was
you guys are so
annoyed.
wrong. We have to just tell
I
you.
was so
like,
annoyed about that. I was like, Steve, why the hell are we showing the final boss
Nobody
in
knows
our
it's the
debut trailer? They haven't seen anything yet, and we're showing them the final boss.
There was a weird kind of implicit arrogance to it, but we were really, really, really spoiler phobic about everything.
We were.
The
we
second
were.
we revealed anything about anything, we were livid. Like, we're gonna reveal like Tiny Tina. Oh, a character that nobody's ever met that has jokes that don't extend beyond this one map. I am furious. Or like,
you guys are pretty uppity about that stuff.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
well, and you know,
think you
Steve
guys
was
have
like,
leveled up.
oh, it's just a silhouette, and it's really quick, and they won't know it's the end boss, and
about all kinds of stuff. I mean, we were like, we were really careful about trying to make sure every returning Vault Hunter that was an NPC this time around had some surprising context you met them in, whether that was like, you know, Lilith being the Firehawk or you know, Brick being the leader of the Slabs, and we revealed like all but one of them, and we were just like, God damn it, why'd we even bother? Like, I'm just gonna show it all on fucking YouTube. And it ended up being fine.
Yeah,
you know? Not 100% of your audience sees all that stuff
you
anyway.
gotta trust us, man.
No, it was I think we could both be justified in the way we felt about
Fair
it,
enough.
because
No,
like, it was totally the right thing to do from a marketing angle, because you understand where these characters are, but we just got to be bitchy about it because that's what we do.
Steve just said you guys were pains in the ass.
Yeah, no, it's,
well, you know,
it's
for,
not wrong.
for us. You know, like we've poured so many years, you know, of heart and soul into this. We want it to be just so when you guys get your hands on it.
Yes, story is the only aspect of the whole game that is specifically constructed to not unveil information to the audience for a really long period of time. Everything else is like, oh, cool, look at this art. Oh, that's awesome. Look at this gun. Oh, that's awesome. Story's like, yeah, I'm not going to tell you shit until like 20 hours from now, so I hope you really like that. And so it's just, it's a harder thing to sort of market. And I remember it was really hard because we had a line at the beginning of the game that I put in thinking I was being cheeky and then took it out because I was a wuss, and then Martel forced me to put it back in, which was when Marcus is doing his narration at the beginning, he says that the vault at the end of the first game is full of tentacles and disappointment, because I wanted to like level with the player, like, yeah, we know the ending sucked too. And I was like, yeah, but I didn't work on that, so that's a really dickish thing to do. So I just removed it, and Martel was like, no, you should put that back in.
It's okay. Yeah. I let you let your sister punch me in the balls over that.
Yeah.
ending, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the biggest lesson I learned from Borderlands 2 is that whenever I don't like a piece of marketing, it's apparently the best piece of marketing in the universe.
He was so against the
Weemaway
trailer. You know,
I
the Lion
hated
Sleeps
that
Tonight?
trailer. I hated it, and it was like it won awards for best trailer of the year. So I'm just like, whatever you want to do, Steve, just fucking do it.
Well, I remember hearing that too about the first game, the box art, where I came in, I was like, oh man, that box art's so cool. And people were like, what are we selling? We selling Suicide? I don't get it. I was like, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And it turns out, yeah, it actually is the coolest thing ever, bizarrely. And yeah, I've lost
It's hard when you get in it.
Yeah, I've lost all ability to understand what's good or bad.
It's really difficult to maintain that objectivity.
Yeah, absolutely.